Hello, my name is Marjaneh Rouhani, and I'm very honored to be at your presence today in this program, in English speaking program in the international network television Iran Aryaee that has been supported by all the Iranians across the world who are freedom fighters, who care for their lives, the future of our children in the world, wherever they are. We, of course, have Iranian background, but once an Iranian, you cannot take it out of us. And I think the best part of it, besides the fantastic food we have, is the love and the care we give to each other, the caring we have for our kids, and we learn to love and the care we give to our elders. And all of this past few months, most of the Iranians, besides the rest of the world, I think most of our culture have been in a state of shock, facing a sense of people who are taking care of their elders and providing care for them. They have not been able to express the love the way they have wanted or they're used to. And I'm sure it's, what I've seen in my practice. The Black culture actually does the same. The Indian culture does the same. A lot of cultures do it, and they all of a sudden they were faced with the fact that they could not even call their loved ones in the nursing home or whoever was providing care for them at the end of life. The hospice care patients, people in the hospital, they could just open a window or they could just wave if they would be allowed to go inside the hospital. But today, again, is Thursday, June 17, 2021. I want to make sure I recite the date. And in this television, we have 4 days of program that broadcasted live across the world. And that's thanks to all the efforts that Mr. Aryaee and Mr. Siavash does 7 days a week, 24/7. And it's through satellite. So we all know somebody like Klaus Schwab has warned several times that there's going to be quote-unquote simulation where all the systems are going to go down. And like the simulation they did, and we talked about that event 201 that predicted or simulated what the fire and the hell, I want to say, everybody went through the past year and a half. I have a hard time really pinpointing the date because the N0 has never been identified for the COVID breakthrough, because there are people who contracted the virus in October 2019, and some as early as September 2019 from what I've gathered. And I keep going back to the virus because I think this is the Achilles of the globalism, where first of all, they really occupied all of our lives, all of our minds. They got free rent in all of our brain cells to we rented our brain space for being in fear while they're up to no good, basically. And I want to say anybody who would have came on national television or broadcasted and threatened to depopulate nations, they would be arrested or they would be under investigation. I mean, in my field in psychiatry, if somebody comes to my office, and everything is absolutely confidential, of course, but if they make a statement threatening themselves, first of all, or threatening others, by law, I am obligated, and I will tell the patient that, at this point, I have to break the confidentiality, and I have to warn the authorities about what you have told me. And there's a law that we have to follow. And I'm not sure if this law is followed when somebody is threatening masses and masses of people with the population, and with all the, things that are listed on their own website, the WEF.org, that advertises. They have beautiful website. I want to say that it could be an envy to any website developer, the state of art. Just keep talking about integrating artificial intelligence with human brain. And basically, there was a broadcast from an individual who is a recruiter and who was in tears that all these people are dying and how are we going to replace them. And basically the answer from World Economic Forum, who signed a contract with United Nations on January 23rd, 2015, in Switzerland, they're governed by the laws of Switzerland in a state where they are basically protected, and basically that has not been made public under what circumstances they will be immune of anything. And maybe that's how they're operating. They're letting all of us know what is coming up next. And with coming up next, we all have seen movies where the leading actor kind of says, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And the person who is being attacked, as a matter of fact, kind of goes in a state of frozen mind, cannot defend itself, because the fear component, which is quite powerful, has been created in his mind. And the leading actor is able to accomplish in Hollywood to do whatever. And we've seen it in different movies. Maybe if I find a segment, I will have it played. I try to minimize we have such limited, I want to say old equipment, and we need all the help we can get from people who are listening, the freedom fighters. I mean, we all need the help to have better system, to have people who can help with designing, with updating our equipment, and all these we open up CNN or Fox or all these they have this fancy stuff floating everywhere. My program starts, and I love this the Hirkani forest, which is the real forest, a magical forest in Iran. If you want to talk about climate, if you want to talk about saving the planet, humans are saving the planet. They do everything to save the planet, given a chance. And it's very interesting that, the companies or corporations that create plastics, create all these things that we as consumers have no other choice to purchase, and they end up basically saying that, oh, you use this and you caused the planet to kind of really deteriorate. No, the corporation that did produce this item should have never been approved to produce an item that is against the world or against the planet. And the corporation should be held liable, not the human beings who go to work. They want to put food on the table and spend some time with their family. And that's, it seems too much to ask at this point, and or too much to want at this point. And meanwhile, while we are doing our simple lives, there are corporations who are quite powerful. They have a lot of money. They have one of their huge wing is this access to media that reaches in fancy ways, in millions and millions, if not billions, of platform everywhere. And if they don't reach it, if even we turn off our televisions, they're faxing, they're putting billboards on, they have fancy light bulbs saying on the street, do this, do that. And human brain is quite impressionable, and we all know that. And we can all go into a hypnotic state by people that we trust, basically. And a lot of us have been in a hypnotic state, and if we don't wake up to see what is really happening and how these corporations have used their money to overrule the constitutions and law and order of many countries, African countries, Asian countries, the United States of America. At least in the United States of America, I know how they have done it. The whole plan, like Dr. Corey used to say, and she unfortunately died of complications of lung cancer. May she rest in peace. And she has a lot of material still on her YouTube and on her media. But she made her whole life. I mean, she worked for the UN. She was working as a land surveyor for the United States of America, and she somehow, because she was a land surveyor, she became alarmed about what was happening many years ago, and she made it her life effort to make other people aware of what is happening to us way before anybody started getting worried. And, she marked 9/11 as the pivotal point where the Patriot Act was activated, and we were searched and molested by the TSA at every level, not even in addition to standing at the airport in a circular MRI where we didn't know how, everything in our body would be seen by somebody. And it was just like blood and flesh. I mean, literally, if you saw the image of what is seen by that MRI machine, is incredible. And besides that, it would be always like, okay, step off this way, Mr. or lady, and then somebody would get called of the same sex, hopefully, and they would rub you in places you don't want to be touched. And so she was alarming everybody about, Dr. Corey was alarming everybody about all of this many years before she wrote a book, Behind the Green Mask. And I want to agree with, all of this vocabulary that is so beautiful. I mean, green is one of the reasons actually I hypothesized several years ago about Starbucks being successful was the color green. And it has to be a special green for the marketing. And they picked the right green, like it's just so attractive for everyone. This greenness, it is sign of life. And I'm proud to say that real Iranian flag is green, white, and red, and has the lion and sword in the middle. And through our flag, we have been able to actually distinguish ourselves from the Islamic Republic that has been basically imposed and enforced upon a nation who is from day one has been against mixing religion with policies or politics, and we were doing very well with the white revolution, as everybody says, and I have said it again and I will say it again. I have been to many meetings, international meetings, and it's very interesting that most people in the powers to be, they are aware of Iranian constitution, law and order, and what Iranians accomplished. And they were, after late Shah of Iran, Aryaee, to have him resign, which he gave up his life not to sign off from or abdicate himself from the throne. And because that's bestowed upon him by the nation, by the parliament, by the powers of the constitution, and there are ways to do it. And for other, nations, we know at the time, there were many clubs that had been formed, like Club Rome had formed, a trilateral commission had formed, and they all somehow are connected to the Rockefeller Foundation. And I think it's a good thing that all these rich, wealthy foundations are giving money for goodness of people. But when we kind of flip through the papers, it's not really going for good of the humanity. It's going for more money for their corporation. And basically the NGOs started being established, not one, not two. I mean, every one person basically started establishing an NGO to even get an invite to go to these events. If you did not have an NGO, you would not be able to kind of even request to be present in these conferences where these discussions were taking place. Now, World Economic Forum, because of the contract they made with the United Nations, and because of the brilliant marketing that Mr. Klaus Schwab has done, has really come up, and you can read through their website. You see the ultimate goal is basically we would have to depopulate. There's no other chance for humanity to survive, and all this fancy terminology. We're going to be green, and there's no talk about China deep throttling the sea from the east to the west. I mean, they're up to Chile, they're up to Peru, they're wiping the entire ocean. And meanwhile, I was thinking about what's been happening and how these people have come up, and part of their policy to impose something that's not elected. Basically, none of these people are democratically elected. Basically, they were smart enough to use local authorities with good words and kind of saying, oh, you're going to be volunteering to make everything green. And so the person would agree. And some people, they had to pay money. The whole point of the matter is that what the phrase I like from Dr. Corey, and may she rest in peace again. I really encourage you to read what she had to say about Agenda 21, which basically now we see many names, and that's just to distract us. Actually, before the program started, we had a discussion with Siavash, and basically we are getting bombarded with a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and just causes so much confusion for us to make a decision. And ultimately life is, even when you kind of, I want to give a funny example, when you're sitting in a car and you have to have food and fast food, for example, you're traveling, one family member may ask, what do you want to eat? Everybody's choosing something or something different, or they cannot come to an agreement because now it's decision-making time. And that's where most of the fights during travels break, actually. Somebody wants to go to McDonald's, somebody wants to go to Wendy's, somebody wants to go to different places, which actually turns out all of these corporations who have different names are owned and follow the same policy. And corporations have taken over our rules, our laws, our constitution, and they've been smart to, I started saying Dr. Corey's quote used to be, it's a global plan, but it's implemented locally. So she believed that in order for people to be able to counteract what is being implemented by these very sick individuals who feel like they're God and they can use anything and do anything and decide anything for us without asking us as people who we live in this planet, and we do have systems in each prospective country, and basically to contract them and be able to stand our ground by local interaction, by local influencing our rules and laws. And there are examples that have even cities close to San Francisco, where they decided on certain educational things and they kicked them out and they said, no, we are not doing this. As you may be aware, we as Iranians, as a matter of fact, one of the things that have been really bothering us and kind of against our culture is this booklet that Khomeini wrote, basically, and all of it is filled with sexual behavior, with different various ways, and including animals, children who are newborn. And it's just an embarrassment. And for us, there's still, after 43 years, there are a lot of arguments and criticism towards all those people who wrote books and well known, and they were just saying all kinds of repeating things like a parrot instead of helping our established system. They went behind Khomeini, and then when we asked them, did you read what he had written? And most of them say that, Shah did not let us read it. And as a matter of fact, in a book, Fall from Heaven by Mr. Cooker, There is a section of it in English. I don't know the Farsi version, but I encourage people to read the English version because it's very well written, as a matter of fact. And when sometimes things get translated, there are things that get missed in translation, and the person who does the translation wants to insert what he believes, and then there's a line in the middle of the page, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe this is wrong. I believe this is wrong. Well, I really don't, frankly, care what you think. I just needed the translation, and we don't have that. At least in the Farsi language, every book has that, and I frankly, I'm going to tell all the translator, I skip it basically, unless they are doing a reference basically to explain the situation. And we don't see it in the Farsi translations because it's questionable who's supporting the translation, and I'm not sure who's translating it anyhow. But the English version says that actually the person came in and showed the manifest from Khomeini to Shah of Iran, and it was a special envoy from Libya, and if I remember correctly. And in that, Shah became, when he read it he was a brilliant individual. He read the manifest in a few minutes, and he became actually very happy. And he said, publish it in 250,000 or 500,000 copies and give it to all the distributed to the youth and in the universities to see what he's about, what's happening. And the person who was the envoy basically followed up with the prime minister at the time, who actually, one of the things that I criticize him about is that every time they asked him anything, he would just avoid any fault or any doing, and he would just say, well, His Majesty said this, or His Majesty told you to publish 500,000 copies, and we still don't know, we doubt that it was published. I know that it was available, but not to that extent. I think ultimately, and the person who kind of says it firsthand to Mr. Cooper basically says that after he met with the prime minister on the third occasion, or tried to see if anything is going to go, the prime minister said, well, we have developed a group, and there are 3 people in the group, and we are working on it. And then the person thinks by himself, it says in the book, that, oh, I know that they're just delaying it and they're not doing it. And so what basically Shah of Iran wanted good information to be distributed for people to be aware of what is coming onto them. And I believe in truth. I mean, in the sense, you have to let people know what is happening for each individual to decide which side of a story or history they're standing on. And I have a good example for example, even in medicine, maybe 50, 60 years ago, if somebody had contracted a deadly disease, the last person who would find out about having a deadly disease would be the patient. Everybody would know it. Everybody would be looking at them in a different way and treating them in a different way. And the person is emaciating, doesn't have taste, is taking more and more medication. Maybe he's picking up because people are whispering. But it's an absolute contrast of what the modern medicine is, in the sense that everybody's out of the circle. The doctor speaks with the patient in the room in privacy, and gives all the options and the choices to the patient. The patient may choose one person because to be with him or her, because a lot of information kind of goes over your head when you're stressed out. But again, that truth needs to be told to the person that's impacting their lives. And right now, a lot of things are happening in the world that is impacting each one of our lives, each one of our children's lives, the future of the planet. And we just don't hear everybody's side of the story. We have one narration, and there are certain words that the artificial intelligence sweeps from the internet, where, for example, that even to the point where somebody, if they made a comment, or if somebody made a statement, basically the comment may be there, but the tweet has been removed. And so we are living in an age of censorship, and maybe this is a much bigger burning book of, reminds me of electronic burning books of the Library of Alexandria, basically, or the library in Iran when first Alexander came in, and then, of course, the Arab invasion, where everything was burned down. They asked Omar, there's so many books in here, what should we do with all these books? And he says, well, we have the Holy Quran, and we don't need anything else. And subsequently, all of the books, all of the history, all of how a great civilization had accomplished, were burnt down, as a matter of fact. And luckily, during Alexander time, though, when they burned down Persepolis, which probably it was not Alexander himself, it was his friends and his surroundings who were quite vengeful and wanted Alexander to look really bad, because he was a very free-minded person, as a matter of fact, when you look at his beliefs, and he was highly educated. But when they burned Persepolis down, a lot of written material turned into brick clay. Now, those clays were discovered, and now there are thousands, by the thousands, in the University of Chicago. And actually, I've sent in some emails to request where are the translations. Some of the translations have been exposed, and they say even women were master builders. They were in charge of situations. They were managers. They had people had disability. People had wages. It was not like how we know of the the Egyptian ways of not paying anybody and using a slavery, or the Romans using a slavery. People were paid, and people were paid in adequate amount. And this is all basically deleted or not talked about in mainstream history, basically. And this is very, very important because this is an accomplishment of humanity several thousand years ago. And we are at the same pivotal moment right now. We have accomplished a lot after the Renaissance. We went through, people getting burnt because they believe Earth is round. And we have a famous story about that with Plato, for example. But now the high tech, all they have to write is that you are violating our rules and regulations of our corporations. Well, I'm sorry, you are there because you are functioning and you have your incorporation you're incorporated under the laws of that particular country where you got incorporated, most likely in the United States or wherever you are at this moment. So for them to overrule everything and for us to kind of be stranded alone with our representatives. I mean, our representatives, I think they are doing as much as they can, but there are a whole bunch of them because they they have been sold this Green Deal, or green sounds so fantastic, so cool, but it's not green. It's about lowering the temperature of the earth maybe by 1.5 degree. And for what? The China is not going to stop anything. India is not going to stop doing anything. America is responsible for everything. And this whole use of the virus, which is there actually, but it's kind of become the reason for the whole world to be so focused and for all of our minds to be thinking about the virus, and this moment that is so essential for humanity to stand up and say, look, viruses were occupy the planet millions of years before humans walked the earth, and even afterwards Neanderthals gave us amazing human immunity. And then we know now what was basically the mainstream media deleted the truth in terms of all the treatments or all the options or all these doctors who were called disgruntled, whoever said a different narrative, they were introduced or they were talked about in a ridiculous or made fun of, and like a disgruntled doctor, disgruntled economist, disgruntled artist, disgruntled this and that and other. And my hat off to Eric Clapton, who openly speaks about his journey through fear, guilt, and compliance. And I think we touched upon that, but you know, when you create the fear of an invisible enemy, and well, at the time we didn't know much about the whole situation, then you're pushed into a guilt where I don't want to kill my neighbor, I don't want to hurt anybody around me. So again, they use the locality or the local from an individual low to high to low to top layer to accomplish what is gonna really eliminate humanity as we know it, basically. So all of us feeling guilty putting those masks that basically Dr. Fauci's emails, who are not talked about on mainstream media anymore. And if it were any other situation. They would be talked about every day. They would be put under the microscope, and to see how billions of people had to suffer because he was talking from two sides of his mouth. There was one regulation for a certain population that he liked, and there was a certain rules and regulation when he would come and show up his face on mainstream media, who would just were amazed by his grandeur, scientific explanations, which did not make any common sense, because we know the virus is so small and it will get through those fibers in those blue masks, which are a huge actually environmental damage. Because they haven't been, people used to, first of all, they didn't dispose them correctly. They wouldn't put them bottom of their purse. They would gather up their nasty other germs, and you breathing your own bacteria. People ended up having allergic reaction to it, and if you complained about it, then you're a bad person. So that sense of guilt, and that was not covered basically, or that sense of the goodness people have inside of themselves, which is really remarkable, what we do for each other. And basically, I have another funny example, or not, it's a funny, tragic example. But then comply with the only one way out. The one way out would be the injection, and not giving all the possibilities. The informed consent covers knowing what is the problem, what would happen if you don't receive the treatment, and basically all the options that are available on the table. That's the informed consent. And we know that nothing in any medicine or injection is revealed to the population unless they are completely approved by the FDA. And then we saw this tremendous move to jab all the youth without having enough studies done. And then the CDC, thankfully, they became aware of it finally, and they said, we're going to have an emergency meeting. Well, emergency meeting is going to, when they announced it was maybe a week ago or even longer. And the emergency meeting is going to happen tomorrow. Meanwhile, the push for vaccinating or giving an injection to our youth, who is the lowest risk at this point, is continuing. Now, the Europeans are continuing to go with the project being the end goal is to kind of really have all of us turned into an iPhone, and once the iPhone or all the the information where we cannot turn it off, you would know what I'm thinking, basically predict what I like, what I don't like, and I cannot turn it off once I have that inside my system. And to have that system, a lot of people are paying the price by all these advertisements, by all this push by the mainstream media, and a lot of people are gonna die. And who is responsible for that? If you look at the informed consent, it says no corporation is responsible. The vaccination people are not responsible. The government is not responsible. We had OSHA who came in and said if a company requires employees to receive the injection, then they're responsible to pay for it. but then they took it back a week later, and in the Methodist workers, healthcare workers who were fighting this with teeth, and all they had with their humanity is saying that we have a choice in the middle. The judge turned over, and now I think they're going to end up in the Supreme Court. But it's all about freedom. We have not been born on this planet. We've been born on this planet to advance humanity, not advance a corporation to make more money for somebody to win at the monopoly or whatever game they're playing, and basically get threatened every day on mainstream media, including all these statements about the world is coming to an end in 12 years, 11 years, and without any evidence, without any scientific evidence, without, and that creating fear should be against the law. It must be against the law. And this is the Nazi method that was utilized, and we've been through it. A lot of people remember it, and we need to know when this apartheid system of people who are vaccinated versus unvaccinated, which Tony Blair basically came out right out and said, you have to separate the people who are not vaccinated. So where are they going to go? Well, for example, in the United States, there are, in each state, apparently there are FEMA locations, the federal agency, where those locations, those localities have not been used. And we do have a history where, for example, during that Japanese, when we had the Pearl Harbor, all the Japanese were put in concentration camps, unfortunately. We've had these ups and downs in the United States, and United States is a pretty strong country in the sense that people eventually come together and say, no, this is not the way it's supposed to go. We're not going to do this. And this whole plan that Klaus Schwab's and his, he's a front face. Basically, there are other people behind him who are funding him. Basically, he's just a fall guy, like Dr. Fauci, like Bill Gates. I mean, this is just, but we know corporation-wise, we have the BlackRock, we have Vanguard, we have the Berkshire Hathaway, and right before anything is gonna, everybody I know is worried about their money, about their ownership. And one of the things that Dr. Corey said, and I want to, because a lot of, what I'm hearing from the American freedom fighters is that, they're going to find this land and they're going to, move their families there and they're going to raise roosters and chickens. And it's not going to happen like that. They already have a map of the world where human beings are not going to be allowed to travel, vaccinated or not vaccinated. And this is going to be the end of an era of freedom, basically. So it's a moment where you have to decide, you're going to stand up for humanity, for your law and order, for your constitution if you have one. And thankfully, United States does have one. Iran has the constitution. But then, through artificial intelligence, they're going to monitor how much money, how much how much water you have in your well, how much soil you have, how much ownership you have, and everything is going to be under surveillance. And you're going to be limited to maybe 5 gallons of water to use, and maybe you're going to be basically you're using too much in the rural, too much land in the rural areas where they want to empty this with this evil plan to empty all these locations. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is what they have announced, and it needs just because it's not repeated and reflected in mainstream media, people are kind of purchasing lands, and but what's going to happen, they're going to come and tax all of it to the point where the people are not going to be able to afford all of it, and people are going to be eating the survivors of all these events that these people are creating, and they're supposed to be working for us. As a matter of fact, our representatives are supposed to be working for us and standing up to these NGOs and corporations who are pushing us in a direction to become like a cattle and have a nanochip in all of us that's monitoring our blood temperature, blood pressure, how we are feeling. And now it makes sense why, for example, we had the unification of the medical health records. They just unified it in the Great Britain, and now we probably are going to have a little bit of bumps in the United States. But once all of these data and these data banking is the money or the resources for these land grabbers or money grabbers or resource grabbers or God complexes, sick people who want to rule the world, then if we don't stand up now, and we don't stand up for the humanity, we're going to be in deep trouble. And I know that all of us care enough and have a lot of love in all of us to stick together and know and talk to our local representatives and stand up to this tyranny. Well, I thank you very much for listening to me today. And tomorrow with Dr. Saeed Hamzavi, we're going to have the constitutional movement in Farsi at 12 noon, New York Standard Time. And Sunday, we will talk about mental health and medical health and all of these that are intertwined and cannot be separable at this time. I thank you, and you well.